Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Erika Alexander, who plays Coraline in the new film American Fiction. And Erika, congratulations, because today you were a nominee at the Spirit Awards for
Come on
Best
now.
Supporting Performance.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Christopher. It's good to be here. And yes, it was a great getting up morning. I got up and was told by a few people, that had happened. And frankly, last year I was invited to someone was very nice and invited me to their table. And I didn't have the credentials to get in. And so the Uber dropped me off near the highway. And I was walking across the sand, past the porta potties, thinking, ain't this a beat? And now look at me. I'm going to go be legit. So it's a really good day. It's boom, just in a year.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. I was super psyched to see the film got like 5 nominations. It did great. It's been just a wonderful so far. I would say I spoke to Sterling K. Brown yesterday about this film. It hasn't even come out yet. And it already feels like so many people have really responded to it. And, obviously it did great at Toronto Film Festival. It won the audience award. I mean, were you, I guess, like, just to starting there, like how was it seeing the response so far before it even has gotten out? I was like, I feel like, how have you felt about that? Are you excited by like how people have really responded to the film?
I'm really excited about that because it's actually been word of mouth. Cord, because we were on strike, has been doing a yeoman's job of walking around America and flying around America, being invited to film festivals, having screenings. And so people have gotten a little, dip of it. And when I tell you that I'll tell people I'm in this new movie, I've heard of it, I'm going. And, it's really nice because they're enthusiastic and excited. Very nice because I'll be in it and they'll be able to see me. But it doesn't always happen that way. So I've been in this business long enough to be grateful, but also to acknowledge you're right. There's something very unique about the way it's being received.
So when you got, I mean, like you said, like Cord has done a great job like promoting it, but obviously it's first time writer and director, a feature writer, but obviously had great success as a TV writer before. So when you get this script based on this book, arranged for by Percival Everett, like what were your first thoughts, I guess, reading? Because I mean, the film is obviously such a great satire, such a great like family drama, all these different things. But I guess what really stood out to you when you first read his script?
The writing. And I knew the writing was wonderful because I was laughing out loud. And anyone who's in near comedy at all knows that really is the thing. If it's funny off the page, as long as nothing messes it up, like, people come with their A game and, ready to play, because comedy only works if you're working off other people. And there's so many nuances, you don't want to labor it too much. Then you have a shot. And so he gave us a really great environment. Obviously, that's a novel that he adopted from Percival Everett. We have to give his shout out because the original idea and thought came from him, but it was adapted extremely well by Cord. And I was glad to be invited to be in it. I've been in the business now next year, 40 years, 30 years since the signature role people know me for, Living Single. And I tell you, it's not every day that you get invited, but also that the person who's wanting you to do the role knows why exactly you're the person for it. So that's always a great compliment.
Why do you think you were the person for this role? Or why do you think what do you think?
You know what? And I'm not trying to give myself a little, the heat here. I think he wanted somebody who could stand next to Jeffrey Wright, the great Jeffrey Wright, who is the lead in this, but also not shrink or be intimidated within that space. And it can be intimidating if you admire the person and you know what they're capable of. But I thought also for what I was supposed to give, which was also be in a mature relationship. We were going to meet cute, like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, that type of thing. And that's not usual, but also be, in some sense, an ingenue, come in with an openness for the relationship. And that's not always, again, I'm like Jeffrey, I'm usually a hammer. I come in to be like, bam, to construct and, be a force of nature sometime and tell people, what's going on. And that wasn't the gig. So it actually is muscles that I'm not often asked to use and can be, you can mess it up. But I had to believe that everything that I've experienced in life brought me to the space to that space. And all I needed to do was not blur the vision, just lay in the cut. And it's harder to do than I think, or anyone might think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great performance, and like you said, I love the relationship between Coraline and Monk, because it does feel so, I mean, like so mature, for like, you know what I mean? Like it's like like they're both grown ups, and it's like very interesting. And I think she's a great match for him. It just is, it really comes across, and you kind of like don't let him, you know, you kind of like call him on his bullshit and stuff, I think, a lot, which is great. It's great. You mentioned Jeffrey, like I think you guys work so well together. It felt like just like it kind of like locks into place what like you, and you, like you said, like he's a great actor, obviously, and like, you know, he has such a, I guess, what were your expectations going in working with him, and like how did the actual experience match, or, you know, maybe differ from those expectations?
Well, I had an expectation, and because I'm not jaded yet, that it was going to be a great experience. I'd never heard anything different about people working with or collaborating with Jeffrey Wright. And it was true. He's a very generous performer. He's a very consciously, caring man. And so I think the vibe of the set, because we had very little time to do this, so it had to be right, and everyone had to come prepared in some way, but also let it fall away so they could, again, be influenced by each other. And it started with him. So I'm not surprised that happened. And by the way, every character carries their own local weather, and he has to, deal with each person. And he's siloed. His character Monk is siloed. And suddenly he has to deal with all these people whirling around him. And he does it beautifully. So that's what it was like. It was a great thing. And again, Cord also set the tone, because he's a new director and not a new writer, very accomplished and very beautiful writer. He was so curious on set, and it wasn't like he was trying to act like he had figured it all out and was trying to cover. He was very vulnerable, and you could see it. And everyone not only saw it, but they didn't get in his way. He needed to experience all those things. And if asked, people could contribute. But I think we just all waited to take our cues from him. And that goes to, again, the writing and thinking, you know what, I'm not going to bring any past experience here except for what I need. And it was really beautiful. And Leslie Uggams, I got to say something about him. If you look at how he cast this movie, which by the way is part of Cord's genius, the fact that he put the unifying gravitas of Leslie Uggams and in the center, especially of her son's relationship, had a force that permeated everything. Again, so much love and respect for her. It just said, well, this is a man who's not afraid of dealing with people who know some things. And yet everybody came like they were a newborn baby.
That's awesome. I mean, like the ensemble is amazing. Obviously, like you said, like you didn't mention Sterling K. Brown too is in this film. It's just everybody is just like firing on all cylinders. That like, does that kind of comfort that you're talking about too, and like that, like maybe that freedom, I guess, is that, I mean, I'm sure that does like make it just a much better, like that opens you up to even a deeper performance maybe than you maybe even thought, right? Or like that kind of thing.
Yes, because it's not obvious. Sometimes if the drama's on the page and you can see it, you go, okay, that's going to be heavy, but you couldn't see it. You almost had to be together with your performers, had to be in the space, listen to the sound of the ocean, and know that even the ambient noise was important for you to acknowledge that if you go into a beach town, which I did a lot of my scenes in, that there's a different sort of relaxed sort of atmosphere. And how does that feel for people who are always coming from the city and always ready? And I was like, Erika, you got 10 seconds to get where this neighborhood is. And any insecurities I might have, which can be many, you just say, listen, I know you're there, put you in the passenger seat. I'm going to drive, and I'm going to trust again that Cord, who is made for the moment, chose me because of what he saw and not necessarily what I see.
Why do you think he is made for the moment? I mean, I kind of agree with that, but what would you say?
He's a modern man. And I think we need to give more props to men who were raised in what could be a very toxic environment, which is American patriarchy and world patriarchy, who were raised by strong women and they have, I think that they're in touch with their feminine divine. And yet I've met his father. He was on set, and you could see the strength inside of the father. So I saw both sides of him, and it's something, there's a conversation about a modern men. And you can also see it again, going back to the cast, that he chose really strong performers known for their individuality. He wasn't afraid to put us all together. He didn't think we were imbalanced. I think he knew that we would find our balance for each other. But that's also sometimes taking a gamble. You don't know. There were no egos. I'm not even kidding you. And I see that now with them, and now being a part of the promotion. So you got these creative chameleon actors who are usually often called to be classically character actors coming into a space where they're a nice jazz ensemble.
Yeah, it really does work. I mean, it works so well. Everybody is so great. The other thing, obviously, I love about the film is it just has some, like, the satire, and I think is saying so much. And I was like going back and looking at past interviews that you've done over the years, and like you said, you're very accomplished since, like, you know, like 40 years, like, or 30 years since Living Single, all these things. And I've seen interviews where you talked about like how Hollywood and like white executives like fail by, like, you know, like commoditizing Black stories, or like making it like Black films instead of just films, right? Or like good,
Yeah.
like in Living Single, like maybe later marketed as like a Black show instead of like just a good show, right? And like,
right, a show with a Black cast, exactly.
right. And like this film is like really doing that, and like talking about it in a way that I have not really seen, at least in on screen, a lot of like those discussions happening. I guess, like, for you, is that like another, I'm sure that was like, how great was it to like actually get to see the movie that's actually saying something that like has been known for a long time, but maybe not actually said out loud on screen?
And Christopher, I worked my whole life for these types of moments. I get overwhelmed because they're important. They lift you up. They reinforce why the universe might have chosen you to be in this space at all. You have very little control over what opportunities I get. Mm-hmm. Except I'm just really tried very hard to do quality work, no matter what. Not say no to things because it was a new director or even a college director. I'm glad to be invited and be in the space still. It's important to me. Going back to what you said about how things are marketed, capitalism is so insidious. It's gotten us here. We talk about Black, white, gender, all these things, but the truth of it is, it's capitalism. It gets us humans in trouble. And if we're marketing something that we think encompasses a whole people, and not realizing that that untruth and stereotype is undermining progress for us all, but certainly for them. And especially with all the things America's gone through. I mean, we are bonded in blood together here. That's the truth. I have British blood in me. You know, we have Scottish and Irish names. And that, in that way, we're a melting pot. And yet we stand, it's like the cheese stands alone. We've got to realize that we're in this together, that what we're exporting to the world is a template and a model for what could be. And so if we're only incentivized by a false capitalization that incentivize people, you know, different players to, it just distorts the needs of the market, distorts everything. That's an issue. And so I think human beings, they're herd animals. They just follow and do what, you know, what's in front of them. But enough's enough. I think that if we don't tell better stories about all of us, we won't have empathy when we need it. And right now in this world, we're seeing that that's an issue. We must have empathy and allow storytellers to be the ones to spread their wings and try things out.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, I think that this film then too, like, gets to that as well, because I think like you're able, like you said, like people are really responding to it, audiences, and I think like so far, and I'm just excited to see how it plays. I think once it comes out, I think more like getting these conversations on the screen, showing the stories like here that we're seeing, like the movies obviously kind of, you know, like we're laughing with like the idea that like, oh, these kind of stories are not being told, right? But like then it is being told in the movie. I just think all of that satire is so well done. It's like really great. So I'm sure
Yeah,
you're
did you
like
notice
excited for
that?
what's going on.
He's got the this parallel thing going on, and underneath we're seeing a version of life with these Black people that is exactly what he wants. And then you're seeing this thug life, this false face. And that, I think, is the subtle genius, because somebody asked me, they said, hey, do you think Coraline will get with, that's my number one question, will she take him back? I said, well, let's just ask the question, is she still dealing with the same person? He's not the same person. The minute he starts to write and the movie goes this way, and we see those fictional players come into his space, I ask people, like Hitchcock might, there's a meta thing that happens that we may not be in the movie we started with at that point, that everything is a fiction, and the whole reality starts to recede. I like that. What?
That is really good. It's really good. Did you, I mean, like that did you think of, like, are there any comps in this movie for you? Were there any, like, I mean, like you're saying Hitchcock there, but I mean, like in general, were you like, oh, because it does feel like something that I've not, like I said, not really seen before, and like certainly not in this way. But for you, were there like other comps where you're like, oh, like, not that you're like thinking, you know what I mean? They're just like in
Yeah,
general, where you're like, oh, this is like kind of like this or whatever.
I did have some comps, maybe because in my storytelling, catalog, when I see a movie like this, I could hear the music of, like, Louis Armstrong playing behind Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks in so many of the movies they've done. I saw the Woody Allen sort of template come in with Diane Keaton and Weiss, and and the playfulness of it. I could hear those notes, especially when I read the agent scene between the great John Ortiz, and that I could hear it all, but I had seen it. It was certainly usually in a white space, because what I love about those scenes is that I can't say it enough. If you're doing embroidery on a silk background, it's all beautiful work, but everyone knows they don't need to hit it out the park in order to win. And there's a lot of things in nuance that fall away in movies of color, where everybody has to prove their masculinity, and sex scenes, the back is humping hard and all that, And again, we continue to do it because that's how it's been done. But for this, I kept thinking, I know what's going to happen when we take that walk. And there we were in those Everglades, walking through that tall grass, eating ice cream cones. I loved it.
Really good. I was reading an article before doing this too, that you've been so busy the last years, but like you said, you've been working so much for your whole career. But I feel like I saw somebody be like, this is like an Erika Alexander renaissance or something. I think that was like Harper's Bazaar maybe said that to you. Do you subscribe to that notion, I guess?
It may be a renaissance. You know what, Christopher? It may be a resurrection. I ain't gonna lie. What is it? Emma, who's in the movie where she plays a Frankenstein character? Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, yes.
Ain't the only one who's been raised from the dead. No, I appreciate that, because what it means is that if I'm having a renaissance, that means that it's talk about the time has come for me a little bit. But it's because I've been, and I'm very clear that I've been trying to not earn my way into the space, but and not justify it, but maintain the possibility for these types of things to happen. So if it's happening, nobody's more grateful or surprised than me.
That's great. And I'm sure, and people like me who are a big fan of your work and in this film, I think also are very happy to see it. We have to go over there, but Erika Alexander, star of the new film American Fiction, and a Spirit Award nominee this year, and hopefully many more accolades to come. Thank you so much, Erika, for doing this.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate it.